all the mobs together. Death gripping that guy in. Careful with Tormenting Ray, make sure you use a defensive. Night bolts. Make sure you're interrupting night bolts. Tormenting Ray again. Careful with Tormenting Ray. Secure the deck. Don't forget to interrupt the night bolts. Can use CCs or interrupts. Tormenting Ray. Make sure you're using a defensive if Tormenting Ray is on you. Tormenting Ray does pick random targets, and it can pick the tank. Tormenting Ray again. Tainted Slash. Make sure you're using a defensive during Tainted Slash. Careful with web bolts. Make sure you're using your interrupts on the web bolts. If you get a web circle around you, make sure you run the web circle away from the party. Bursting Cocoon. That is the web circle. We gotta make sure it is not on the party. You can stand in on melee. Just make sure that you're not overlapping melee with it. Flying over to the other ship. To the other ship. We're gonna call it a boat. Interrupt web bolt. Bursting Cocoon. Make sure Bursting Cocoon is not on your party. Again, Bursting Cocoon. Make sure it's not on your party. Obsidian Beam. Ouch. Again, make sure you're using defensive during Obsidian Beam. I just realized this entire party can heal except the mage. Collapsing Night. We're going to move the boss a little bit away from the Collapsing Night. Burning Shadows. Burning Shadow is actually a dispel that the healer has to dispel and then heal through on other players. Ouch. Careful with the Obsidian Beam. Careful not to actually get hit by the Obsidian Beam while trying to avoid your Pink Buster. Fly Out of the Darkness Comes. Remember, Darkness Comes is a one-shot. Even if you stand in and shield, it is a one-shot. Collapsing Night. Obsidian Beam. Again, defensive during Obsidian Beam. Obsidian Beams again. Make sure you're using a defensive. Shadow Bolt, interrupt Shadow Bolt. Alright, boss is dead, so we are going to go down to the church. Oh, I'm coming down this church. You're good. You think he wants us to pull him in like the last group did? Nah, if he wanted us to pull him in, he'd say it, right? Tormenting Beam. Make sure you interrupt Tormenting Beam. Okay. Pull inside. Tormenting Beam again. Don't stand in the purple. Ouch. Okay. Need the little guy from outside. Thank you. Don't know who interrupted it, but that was actually helpful. Nightbolt. Make sure you're interrupting Nightbolt. Black Hail. Don't stand in any purple circles. Make sure you're watching the Dark Blade. Dark Blade is not... It doesn't do a lot of damage, but it is a burst of damage. So if you are low on health, you want to make sure that you're interrupting or CCing or stopping that Dark Bolt from hitting... Dark Blade from hitting you. Like every other cast is called Bolt. Tormenting Beam. Make sure you're interrupting Tormenting Beam. Okay, let's get these off the stairs. Get down here. Again with the Tormenting Beam. At 50% health, I would still use Dancing Rune Weapon. 2% left on this last guy. Knockback, be careful to knockback. Also, if you want to know what the coolest looking thing in this church is right now, it's definitely this carousel of books. I don't know who invented this carousel of books, but it is super cool. Okay. I think there's gonna be one more tank buster. Okay. Don't. Wait, now hit them. Black hail. Careful that black hail. Ouch. Number one rule as a tank. Never turn your back to the mobs. If your back's up to the mobs, you can't parry. Okay. To the church. Or I mean the house. AKA the hardest part in this key. Careful the frontals. Tank face them everywhere. Abyssal blast. Use defensive. Watch the frontals. Remember the frontals on this pole are always on the tank. So you do actually aim where these frontals go on this pole. It is hard sometimes to aim them in one direction, so what I do is I actually step through the mobs to avoid the frontal. I step through the mob. Then the second frontal, I step back through the mob. That may not be the best way to go about it. You could step left and right. Just make sure you don't hit your healers. Nice. And keep in mind, you can mount in combat in this key. So you can actually mount and fly away from your party if they're in combat. Just be careful, make sure that your pole is dead before you fly away. Careful with the frontal. Nightbolt needs to be interrupted. Ensnaring Shadow. But these guys, they don't butt pull anything. Tormenting Beam. Make sure you interrupt Tormenting Beam. Watch the frontal. There we go. Again, careful with the frontal. 9% left on the boss, on the mini boss. One more frontal on the orb. Okay, we need 3%. So we are going to pull this mob back here, which people don't normally pull this mob back here. So a lot of groups, they don't come back here. But if you pull it, your party will come. Or ping it. I'd say either pull it or ping it. Silken Shell, make sure you're interrupting Silken Shell. This one mob is worth 3%. So it's worth grabbing this mob. Also, it gets it out of the way for the boss fight. The boss does not reset until after the second lantern. So if you are tanking the boss this way and you're getting knocked back, be careful not to go past the second lantern because the boss does reset. Tacky Nova, step out of the circle. Alright, pulling the boss. Careful with the frontal. Knock back. Animated shadows. Pull all the animated shadows in. Watch the frontal. Terrifying Slam. We're gonna end up pulling that pat behind us. Frontal. Careful of the frontal. Yeah, get that guy. 39% left on the boss. Terrifying Slam. Number 1 rule of the tank. Never turn your back to the mob. %, left on the boss. Careful with Terrifying Slam. Right, to the Dawnbreaker.
She's got a lot of talent there.
Oh, I thought you'd think so. I was a model back in Texas.
Slowly charging. Careful those purple circles. Make sure you're using defensives if the purple circle is on you. Remember that the purple circles from the Nightfall Dark person never lands on the tank. Tormenting Beam. Interrupt Tormenting Beam. pointing beam again. We are chain pulling the boss because we have shaman pets over here, so you do have to be careful with pets because sometimes if pets follow this mob and there's nothing else for them to attack, a lot of times the pets just pull the boss right away. Shaman pets, warlock pets, hunters pets. So you want to be careful and just pull the boss if the pet's gonna pull the boss. If your healer looks like he's in good shape. Hello, Jeff Side. Incredible work on this 12. Thank you. Yeah, looks like we're gonna time it. Knock on wood. There's no emote for knock on wood, I've tried. But the key is going well. Mounting. And welcome back to stream. Remember, use 6 seconds after entering the darkness to make it to the platform. Wow, he's been here forever. Interrupt the acidic cast. 3% left on the boss. Remember to run the webs out. Careful when breaking the webs. The webs will do a burst of damage to the party after you break them. Watch the circles. 2% left on the boss. And 8 minutes left on the key. Careful with the circles. We're out of buttons. 1% left on the boss. Remember, as the tank during this boss fight, during the Rashinan boss fight, you never want to step away from the boss. If you step away from the boss will do AoE damage to your party. So you can step left or right around the boss, but do not step away from the boss, even to avoid the webs. .6%. Careful with the line.